This is Most Ray. Welcome to the Underground Footy Podcast. Hello, everybody, and we're back. It's the Underground Footy Podcast Development Series. This is Season 2, Episode 2. And today, I have with me Julian Myers from Sporting Talent. He is a sports agent. I will let him give you his credentials and such, and we'll go from there. But I want to thank you for tuning into the Underground Footy Podcast, and I'm hoping that you will subscribe. I hope you will share. I hope you will just enjoy it, and we're trying to build. So please just, like I said, if you like what we're talking about, and even if you have any ideas, you can always contact me through PG Young Boys on Instagram and also on Twitter. All right. So anyway, we're about to get it cranking. Julian, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit with me, because the goal here, the goal here is to help parents, coaches, players, and just people that are interested in how the youth development pathway works. All right. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a sports agent and built your agency.
Yeah, so originally from London in the UK. I grew up playing my grassroots soccer over there locally in South London. I went on to play in academy over in the UK during the ages of 14, 15, at the age of 16. In the UK is when it's a decision moment wherever you get a scholarship, what we deem as a YTS, as a young apprentice, in which I was at a club called Wycombe Wanderers for 2 years. And then at the age of 18 is where it's like do or die, whether you get the professional contract or if you don't. At that age, myself, I would say I was a little ill-advised. Well, I didn't really have any advisors. I was a bit of a little knucklehead that had a huge ego, that thought probably I was better than I was. Had options laid out for me in which I declined, and I thought, another route was going to be easier or I could find my way somewhere else. It didn't work out. I was fortunate enough that my father, who now was residing in Silver Spring, Maryland, got on the phone to me and just told me, Julian, I can do the paperwork, get you a green card, and you can pursue your passion over in the US. So I came over to the US. I went the college soccer route, in which I played in Connecticut for 4 years, in which my senior year I was diagnosed with an enlarged heart, that kind of put a little kink in my plans of wanting to be professional. I had to seek opinions from a few different cardiologists. Initially, I was ruled out from playing in my senior year, and by the grace of God, I sought another opinion and I was able to get cleared for my senior night, which was a great send-off for me. But I didn't really do enough, I would say, in my college career to really, help propel a career. But I was, fortunate enough to continue to play post-college in upstate New York, in Rochester. And then I played out in Seattle as well, in which, I was able to play professionally. And then after that, I was in a point where I was looking for my next gig. I had various agents that I was working with at the time. I got to a stage where there wasn't really anything in the pipeline, so I transitioned into coaching. I had the opportunity to coach in Massachusetts, Division II school. So I was there working as a coach, helping build a program, and I was there for close to 5 years. But having been in Maryland and been in the Northeast, in Connecticut, in upstate New York, Seattle, and kind of bouncing around the country, I developed a significant network in the game. And then as I was coming towards the tail end of my career as a college coach, I just found myself in more positions of being a consultant, helping professional players in, negotiations of their contracts, advising players on things to do and things not to do. And being able to be an advocate for players. I had various relationships in the professional game, and pro coaches, pro scouts would reach out to me for player recommendations, and I was able to have the leverage and the relationships to be able to sort some players out. So that led me into, I feel like it's somewhat of a calling, for me to be an agent, and it was right about to hit in the pandemic when I met up with my now colleague Ryan Smith, who had a very different pathway to myself, and he really wanted to start something fresh. Wanted there to be, an opportunity for players in the US. He's based in the UK, and I've been over here for the past 15 years and know the landscape from, the pro landscape, the youth development landscape, and college, and everything else in between. So we kind of merged together, and in the summer of 2020, I transitioned out of college coaching into being a full-time agent, in which I'm a FIFA licensed agent today.
Okay. And how long does a process like that take? What is the how would someone do that? And I'm not saying it so I want you to get all this competition. I'm more so just trying to let people know how
Yeah.
it's done.
So as of what year was it? Hold on. So FIFA have now implemented the licensing, in which you have to do an exam to become a FIFA licensed agent, and those exams are only run a couple times a year, and they're actually going to, I believe, transition it to being only once a year. However, so that's how to become a FIFA licensed agent. But in order to like develop a network of contacts and relationships with clubs, that takes multiple years. To be trusted in the agency, to understand the nuances of contracts, and build up trust and a network of scouts. That takes multiple years.
Okay, so in your agency, it's yourself and Ryan. What's Ryan Smith?
Yeah, so that represent players in North America is myself and Ryan, but we also have a few other agents in the UK office. I am the only boots on the ground in the US.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the US side, and I like to talk about from grassroots because I have a lot of parents and folks that want to know about these things. There's a lot of bad information or misinformation that people can pick up. Not saying people are doing it on purpose, but they hear something and they pass it on. So what is the process to you when you're looking for young talent? Like, how do you identify a young player, and how young do you feel like is actually feasible to try to figure out, hey, this one might have something?
Yeah. Uh, youth development is youth development is tricky because players develop at different rates. I would say I really personally wouldn't necessarily start tracking a player until 15, likely a freshman in high school. But that's an age where I may start tracking the player. So I'm going to build up um, my portfolio of data and my scouting reports over, that year, just to kind of see how a player, trends, how consistent their performances are, how impactful they are in the game, what they do in possession of the ball, what they do out possession of the ball. And then over the next year or two is when I will continue to monitor the player. And if I feel that they seem to me as tracking as a potential professional prospect, that's when I will, try and engage with the player and their family, to get a better sense of who the person is.
Now, what is the procedure as far as getting in touch with the coach? Because, I've been involved with it, and, agents can get in touch with people in various ways.
Yeah.
Some ways are probably more proper, and some ways some people may feel is a little less scrupulous. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to judge that. I just want to know more so
Yeah.
about how you would like if you see a 15-year-old
Yeah.
that
So,
potentially has talent.
so due to the fact that they're a minor, the best way to proceed is to approach the parents, um, and have that conversation that, I feel your son or daughter is an extremely talented player. I'm a FIFA licensed agent. Would you be comfortable with us setting up a meeting and having a conversation, or would you be open to the discussion of your son or daughter's development, and knowing bit more about myself and what a sports agent does?
Okay. Now, obviously, there's different size agencies.
Mhm.
Would your agency, I guess, would be considered like a boutique agency? You have a smaller list of clientele than I'm not going to name them, but some of the big boys out here.
Yeah, yeah, we would be described as a more of a boutique agency, smaller size agency with a smaller clientele.
Okay. And do those players that you're looking at or that you're dealing with, is it a certain type of profile that you would be looking for?
The profile ranges. I honestly like what I like are um, players that are engaged, that are locked in the game, players that I can see, have a bit of tenacity about them, players that are, not only good on the ball, but off the ball, they're locked in and they're willing to put in work. But, from a profile perspective, I'll look at players that are, as high profile as youth national team players to see if they're impact players, and players that aren't youth national team players that are, academy players. I watch players, college players. I watch, a variety across that scope. Um,
And how do you feel that I mean, obviously you coached in college.
yeah.
How do you feel like the college game is progressing? I mean, some people are like, oh man, it's all these foreign guys coming through,
Mhm.
and then, the other side of that is a rising tide floats all boats. You have to learn to compete on a global level, things
Yeah.
of that nature. How do you feel the college game has changed since maybe pre-COVID or, a few years before that? I mean, I don't know exactly when. I'm not going to age
Yeah.
you, but
Yeah.
what do you see in the difference in the styles of play?
Yeah, the college game has changed. I would say, yeah, you could say from the composition of squads. I know a lot of people will refer to, the number of internationals. The college game is a physical, fast-paced game. Um, there's no hiding behind that. And I see it has a place in the development of the American player, or development in North America. But it just depends on, um, from a perspective of professional aspirations. Um, you need to Players need to be able to compete regardless of coming out of high school into a pro environment, coming high school into a college environment. And I feel like what college still has today is, more senior players, players from a vast, different backgrounds in which a player has to, overcome. Growing up in a certain region, you may only come against local competition. For the most part, you will come against local competition. You'll come against domestic competition, even in your regional tournaments. And then when you play nationals, obviously you play guys on the West Coast, guys in the Midwest, guys from the South. So that allows you to have a better understanding of the game, facing different styles of play. Obviously, every people within this country is a multi-ethnic country, but college does have those discrepancies with ages where an 18-year-old is going to be competing against a 21-year-old or the 22-year-old,
Or a
which
25-year-old.
or a 25-year-old,
Right.
which is valuable, which is definitely valuable for the young player.
Mhm. And what are your thoughts on, there's other leagues, obviously, besides MLS Next
Mhm.
and, you know, um, the MLS versions of MLS Next. So you
Yeah.
have a lot of ECNL, and some of it is just accessibility, right? There's
Yeah,
only a certain amount of MLS academies. They're only
yeah,
in certain regions. What
yeah.
would be your advice to someone who maybe lives in a region where it's not accessible?
Yeah, no, that's a
I mean,
tough position.
do you manage to scout in those areas, or do you wait for showcases? I mean,
Yeah,
do you attend, like, let's
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah,
an ECNL showcase? I know I don't know quite as much. I know there's National League and RL. I'm not real
yeah.
familiar because my kids pretty much played in the DA and in MLS next.
Hmm.
But I do know that an argument can be made that there's some very good players that just
Yeah,
are not able to get to those platforms.
yeah.
Now, so do you look at those platforms?
In the past, I have. I don't look at those platforms in all honesty, but I know there's talented players there. I do
Mm-hmm.
have relationships with. I know they're scouted by MLS academies. So the fortunate thing is, if a player is, a standout in that environment, there's a good opportunity that, an MLS club may be sniffing around. If they make it to these showcase events, then, Columbus Crew might be sending you an email, Orlando City, or an MLS academy could be reaching out in order to recruit your child.
And what do you say is the time when you should make a jump like that? I mean, I guess it could vary.
Yeah,
The times, the age groups that they've accepted kids has varied from almost U11,
yeah,
and it's went up to like 14, 15, and it's
hmm,
bouncing around, and like even the age groups, there's some discussion about the US. I'm not sure exactly which clubs or whatever are thinking about going back to age, school year, as
right.
opposed to the
Calendar, yeah.
global standard.
So yeah, it's funny you said that. So it's I think that's a misconception. So like in the UK, in England, it's gone by school year. The calendar year is just the national team setup. So it's just the
Mhm.
national team age group that's calendar year. But in regards to youth development in the UK, and I'm speaking on England specifically, is actually school year, is
Mm.
actually an age group. So they don't quantify all only when it's like the England national team because the FIFA sanctioned national team tournament is calendar year. That's the only so when it's so if they're calling up a player for the U16s, England U16s, I'm just using England as an
Yeah.
example. Yeah. There's going to be a mix of players from two age groups essentially
Hmm.
because the players from
Okay.
uh, September to December you know, are in the age group above, and the players from January to August are in the age group below.
Okay. So now we got kind of when what age do you feel? I
Sorry,
mean,
vice versa.
I got off track, but what age do you feel like is when you should show
Yeah,
up to an MLS academy if the possibility is there? Or do you feel like MLS next, if it's not an accessible situation, will also be able to show your skills because you will ultimately play against some MLS clubs, I suppose.
yeah. I think I would say you know ideally by the U16 age group, I would say the latest would be ideal to transition.
Mhm.
That gives the player an opportunity to move in and if it works out for them and their family, for the player to be have a homestay or move to the residency of the club to use that U16 year as a an adjustment period to figure out how their routine is and adjust because beyond like post that U16 year, the gap starts to kind of separate a lot more what the now U18s get exposed to from we use GA Cup for it as an example, as well as opportunities to potentially train with the second team. Those exposures are harder to come by when you're transitioning in at the U18 level.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess that, another question that I have is because, you see a lot of people talking about you should go to Europe, or, this, that, and the other. And I think that a lot of people
Yeah,
don't understand the complications and some of the things that are in place
yeah,
by FIFA, to avoid both any kinds of
yeah,
abuse.
yeah,
And in addition, I feel like it's to protect
correct.
markets, right? I mean, I had someone tell me that
Uh,
you don't think it's to protect markets, or
so the you're talking about like minors are leaving the country. Is that what you're
yes,
referencing,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So, um, so there's child traffic. They want to prevent child trafficking. So there's been examples in the past over years that there would be these so-called agents or people posing as agents that will go to African countries that will promise players and their families that they can get them opportunities in Europe, in which players and families, a player will go around, to their different family members to help them sponsor, funding coming over to Europe, and then there's no opportunities over there in Europe, or this agent goes on and might find a trial, or it might be a falsified trial, and then players are really kind of strung from their homes and their support system, and they've been brought into Europe on the hinges of this dream, and then things can happen to them when they're in a different country as a minor without the protection of their family and their support system, or they could be abandoned, and so on and so forth. So, though, that's the messy side of things. To prevent any of that, as well as, professional soccer or professional football, is, a job, right? So in order to work in any country, so in order to work in the US, you need to be able to have a permit. You have to either be a US citizen or have a work permit. And then, in Europe, within the EU continent, when you have a European passport, there's the freedom to travel. And one of the benefits is you can work within Europe due to having access.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause that there for a minute because I lost you.
Yeah,
You froze
sorry.
up. Okay,
You
so
good?
now what's some of the things that you want to share with parents when they're looking at potentially pursuing a professional career in the United States
Yeah.
or overseas? I'm sorry. I didn't mean just in the United States. I meant people from the United States pursuing a professional career. I mean, talk about some of the levels of professional in the US as well
Yeah.
as abroad, because I think there's some discrepancies in, like, okay, this guy's a professional because he plays in the fifth division in, I'll just say Croatia, because I don't know anybody
Mm-hmm,
playing there. I
mm-hmm.
don't want to insult
Yeah.
anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the divisions do have significance that is different between the countries, correct?
Yes. 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 Yeah. There's depending on the countries, they have X amount of professional tiers. So in the US, there's three professional tiers in the US, MLS being the top tier, USL Championship being the second tier, and the third tier being MLS Next Pro as well as USL League One. So there's three professional tiers in the US. If we looked at the UK, where I'm from, there is the English Premier League, which is the top division, the Championship, League One, League Two, and then the National League, the conference is seen as a professional league as well. So that's five tiers of professional in
Mm,
England.
okay. So
And then in other countries, they may differ between 3, 4, 2, and so on.
Let's talk about the easiest countries to go play in, right? Because like I've heard, okay, England is very difficult without an EU passport, even for an older player, like an over 18 player. But then a lot of people will go through like a Germany or a Belgium or something like that. When I talk about easy, I'm not talking about any playing professionally is never easy. But what I mean is the countries that maybe it's easier to get the what do you call it? The paperwork to be able to play. So like I've heard like Belgium and the Netherlands maybe is not as tough as or Germany is not as tough as maybe England. I don't know about Italy. I don't hear a lot about people going there to play that don't have a Italian
So
heritage.
with regards to like level of play, or just in regards to getting a permit, like
Getting a permit.
legality.
Like well, we
Okay.
could say, okay, second division of any of them,
Okay.
right? Or
So
first.
in the Netherlands, so Belgium is easier, is pretty easy. In order, like, if a club likes a player, they just have to make above, a certain salary, in which it's pretty affordable for clubs in the Belgian first tier to pay. Um, in the Netherlands, a foreign player has to make above a certain salary, but that salary is significantly higher than any like average player within Europe. So typically, only 2 clubs in the Netherlands are paying those salaries. So you would see the Netherlands is a primarily Dutch league, or players with EU passports, because they're not a rich league, but they're also known as a developmental league. So they provide
What
opportunities
are
for.
those? What are those two clubs?
Yeah, one of those two
Ajax is
clubs.
one.
Yeah, those. Yeah, Ajax is one, and three PSV Feyenoord, but those clubs are the only clubs that are really rich enough to be buying foreign players.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But they're
and
buying them primarily to develop them some more and sell on, you think?
correct, correct.
They're not doing it to stay promoted, obviously, because they can do that with the players they have there.
Yeah, and they're a team that don't have to just um, rely on their talent pool and their scouting department to be local and regionalized. They can scout further afar. Other teams don't have the kind of budget, so they have to try and really find top talent that is local or
Okay.
within the EU.
And what are some of the names of the players that you guys represent?
Yeah, so on our books at our sporting talent agency, we've got a player called Mason Burstow. He was at Chelsea. He recently got a transfer to Hull City in the Championship. Zach Sturge, who was the England youth national team player, he's on Chelsea's books. Over in the US, we have homegrown Chicago Fire homegrown player Misael Rodriguez, Isaiah Foster at FC Cincinnati.
That's
Uh,
one of our guys.
yes, yes. Canadian men's national team player, and played in the 2022 Gold Cup, Tyler Pasha.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my clients. We've got, players playing in the US in the MLS, USL Championship, and MLS Next Pro, and USL Super League.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Now listen, if somebody kind of wants to, I guess, get to your website or maybe get in touch with you, what is what's your preferred method? I mean, you can give your Instagram, your Twitter, whatever, and I want people to follow what you guys
Yeah,
are doing, and you know, so that we can promote, our. I mean, I still consider you a local guy, even though you got that
yeah, yeah,
that funny accent. But I've seen you around for quite a while, and I know that you work really hard to reach out
yeah,
and find talent. So I just want people to know that their agents are and the scouts are out there, but the players got to play, right?
yeah. No, the players do have to play. We try to, find great talent that have potential, but you know, we can only do so much. We use our relationships and we have the expertise off the field, but you know, we're not the ones executing on the field. The player has to be able to, you know, execute the fundamentals and, you know, stand out and do what they can on the field. And I would say the best way to, you know, reach me is on Instagram, official Julian Myers at official Julian Myers, or on X at official J Myers.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll make sure that's running across the screen under you or above you or somewhere.
Okay.
I do want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're real busy, and you know, we're gonna swing back around and talk to you whenever you're ready.
That sounds good. No, I
All right.
appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Take care.